The title for today is Understanding the Nature of Fear. And the format, as usual, we'll do a silent meditation for a couple minutes, and then we'll go into a guided meditation. And then from that, I'll just keep speaking on the nature of fear, and then we can dialogue, ask questions, and such. The most gentle invitation of meditation is to return to your naturalness. A permission recognized within yourself to relax. One of the biggest barriers to the space of meditation is an assumption that has a goal in meditation. The idea that we're trying to attain something, to get somewhere, when really meditation is the opportunity to let all of these things go, if only for right now. Nothing to attain, nothing to figure out, just an opportunity to rest in stillness. it can be such a gift to watch ourselves relax into what actually is, noticing the profound difference between mental commentary and a reality that's actually real. It's almost as if we stop listening from the mind and we begin listening with our whole being. I invite you to recognize this with all the sounds that might rise and fall, with all the sensations that come and go. Listen from a space that completely allows all of these things to be what they are. You'll recognize an opening up to them rather than a mind trying to figure them out. And I invite you to recognize that when the mind tries to figure something out, it almost pushes away at the same time. Almost like, I can't allow this until I understand it. And do you see how noisy the mind can become when it feels like it must understand and define everything it hears and sees? And I invite you to connect with this space inside of yourself that allows for all things to come and go. This space within yourself that isn't concerned with figuring it out. And to connect with such a space, one way that you might visualize this is that you are the one that holds all of these noises. You are the space that allows for all sensation. It's almost like recognizing all of this is inside of you. everything heard, everything seen, everything felt. This moment of meditation, very gently and simply, an opportunity to connect with what you are, rather than thinking about who you are. Feel the emptiness within yourself, an emptiness that is full of all that is. And again, just recognize all that rises and falls happens inside this emptiness. Every sound is held by silence. Every form arises and falls into the empty. Everything is held by the nothing. I invite you to recognize the beautiful quality in the sound of rain. Almost as if it's its own instrument. And also notice the simplicity of understanding the rain in such a way that the mind says, why is it raining? And life says, because it is. In such a way that it's raining because it has to be raining. How do you know it's supposed to be raining? Because it is. Look at how the mind can just freak out in complexity, when actually it's profoundly simple. It rains so that life can be life. And with every drop of water, it nurtures whatever it touches. And also notice the capacity to argue with the rain. An argument that says it's too early or too late, it's too much or not enough, as if life could make a mistake. So silly it would be to curse the rain. And this kind of brings us into the topic for today, which is understanding fear. And if you're going to understand anything, the very first thing you must do is release your argument. To understand something, you acknowledge that you don't know. And if there's any argument, it assumes it knows something. It assumes it knows something that it doesn't really know. And this is the difficulty with fear, is that there's something within the human being that rejects fear, that thinks it's misplaced. And I invite you to open up to the possibility that just like everything else in life, fear too is perfectly placed. And so in a very playful way, in our openness to understand the nature of fear, we can invite fear in to such a space and sit down and have a cup of tea with fear. It's such a joy to discover a space inside of yourself that does not fear fear. There's such a joy to discover a space within yourself that doesn't have to run from the fearful. Oh my goodness. And the invitation as we sit together is for you to connect with a space within yourself. And even if you just recognize it for now, that there is this space within yourself that is unmoved by fear. It's the same space within yourself that's unmoved by the weather. You see, it's the mind that has so much commotion about things. It's the mind's comments about this and that. And so I invite you to imagine you're having this conversation with fear. A willingness to deeply listen. What might the fear say? I'm afraid of what? And it's wise to recognize, in a way we can say that fear is woven into any disturbance you might experience. And just notice that. An agitation, a sadness, a frustration. All of these disturbances are flavors of fear. And these things really are impossible to talk about. And so we go slowly. And what I point you to see is that in some way or another, the fear says, I'm afraid that I'm separate. Separate from what? What I crave. And it's so beautiful because this is the way it unfolds within every human being. Maybe in such a way that it's not a spiritual thing, it's a real thing. That every human being's agitation comes from a fear that says, I'm afraid that I'm separate from what I crave. And you can notice this in the most simple and in the most complex. Throughout your days, the small or large annoyances, all essentially saying the same thing. There's a sweetness to this fear, a beauty to it, where if it's afraid of separation, it's looking for wholeness. It's looking for union. It's looking to unite with something beautiful. And when you see what it's looking to unite with, it becomes infinitely more beautiful and super sweet. It's almost like a loving parent listens to their child express a fear that there's a monster in the closet. And the parent says, "Oh my goodness, that's so cute." Knowing that there isn't really a monster in the closet. Knowing that the child's perfectly fine. And the loving parent completely understands that sometimes we get confused about what's real and we imagine monsters that aren't really there. I invite you to recognize the monsters you've imagined in yesterday, only to find out that they weren't really there. And maybe even now you have monsters that you imagine to be real. You see, when you're afraid of fear, you don't listen to fear. When you're afraid of fear, you run from fear. Do you see how when you run from fear, you make real what you're afraid of? You empower it. It grows. It chases you. And the sweetness of this invitation is to discover that space where you're not afraid of fear and you finally look at fear. And as you stop and look, this fear begins to shrink. What was once a loud and angry fear becomes a soft, gentle fear. A sweet, innocent sadness of fear. Do you see the nature of the fearful in whatever way it expresses itself? It says, I'm afraid I'm not lovable. I'm afraid I'm separate from love. And even to see this in yourself, but you can see it in every human being, which really helps to lighten the blow when you look inside of yourself. It's not just you, it's everyone, which makes it easier to look at. And just notice how this fear that says, I'm afraid I'm not lovable, can get so loud and violent. And yet underneath this is a softness. A softness that says, I'm just scared. And this is much too simple for the mind. For the mind thinks there's a million things to do about it. But actually, no. Because as you sit and be with this fear, as you listen, you become the solution. You become the remedy. You embody the healing. And let's look at this from a practical standpoint. And we can see it in relationship dynamics. Like imagine yourself in conflict with another human being who this person is loud, angry. And you can see underneath it is a fear that's giving birth to this expression. Do you see that whatever they're loud and angry about isn't what it's really about? There's something underneath it. Underneath, there's something saying, I'm afraid that I'm not lovable. I'm afraid I might lose love tomorrow. That's what it's really about. Do you see how the moment you see what it's really about, you begin seeing them with loving eyes? Just acknowledging the real issue. And in seeing what it's really about, do you recognize that there's a space that opens up to you that allows them to be them in their fear? Allows them to be angry? Allows them to be loud? It's a space that doesn't push away. And we can see this happen in a relationship dynamic on the surface, but it's also what happens inside of you. Where you nurture the relationship with yourself, by acknowledging the real issue, which is listening to this fear and saying, what's this really about? Holding space for this fear to be heard. And you see, as you hold space for it to be heard, you find out that what it's afraid of isn't really true. This is often why talking or communicating and listening is so incredibly helpful. My God, we spend enormous amounts of money paying people just so that we can talk to them, so that we can get it out. And what do we find? Oh, there's nothing to be afraid of. You see, fear points you to the confusion. This is the instrument of fear. This is the blessing of fear. It's a gift that's been given to all. We just misunderstand it. There's a great power in such a humility to acknowledge fear's presence. There's a great unfolding of a love for what you are when you can acknowledge the deeper issue. This is to truly nurture the relationship with yourself. And it's fantastic because you can see in a very real way the only difficulty we have as human beings comes from this element of fear. Almost to the point where we say, man, if I was just not afraid, I could enjoy myself so much more. And there's a profound truth to that, but the path is through the fear. The path is opening to fear, allowing fear. Understand its nature in the same way of nature being nature, is that everything serves. And if we have argument with anything in nature, then we simply misunderstand what we're looking at. So I invite an openness that can allow for a transformation in your relationship with fear, and see it as a friend. And something says, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you for fear. I love you. Even you too are not misplaced. Beautiful. I love this human game. This is so much fun. When I watch my own plays of fear, it's really hilarious because when I sit and be with it, I'm like, okay, what's this really about? And it's always some form of, I'm afraid of losing love tomorrow. That's all. That's what it always comes down to. Is I'm afraid that I won't be how I'm supposed to be. I'm afraid that I'm going to show up and it's not going to work out, and then I'll lose love. And it's amazing to see that it all circles around love. The idea that I could somehow be separate from it. And then to sit in this space and see the impossibility of that. Wow. There's such a social conditioning where it's like we've been told what is lovable and what is not lovable. And so we try and match that image. And so in that we're terrified of being ourselves. Look at the insanity of this. In order to get love, I must deny love to myself. Which is, in order to be accepted, I must reject myself. Is that not insane? And the funny thing is if I accept myself, I don't care if anyone accepts me or rejects. It becomes irrelevant.
And then you become a magnet.
Exactly. Isn't that interesting? Wow. And we're just finding our way through this conditioned nonsense, all of which is just up here, just noise. Always questioning our movements. Is this the right or wrong thing? As if, will I lose love or gain love? And there's a space within yourself that truly doesn't even ask that question. Because without that question, you just move naturally. I had a friend that was messaging me the other day, so sweet. She's kind of going through a difficult time. And, in some way or another, she was just saying, I want to know that I'm okay. Right? That's the big thing. I want to know that I'm not doing it wrong. Just feeling what I'm feeling and being how I'm feeling. It was so sweet because to look and observe, it's like, you're so cute. Just be. Feel what you're feeling. Allow what's moving. Let it come and let it go, like the seasons. Could you imagine the winter showing up and being concerned if it's doing it right? It's like, is it okay for me to be me? Is it okay for what I am to be what I am? And all of life says, yes, winter, be winter, thank you. All of life needs you to be what you are. That's what I love about human beings, man. Everyone is just playing their perfect part.
We have to have faith.
That's helpful, isn't it? Yeah.
That the universe will present to us what we need.
Yeah. And there's a space of no doubt in that. Like, it can't be any other way. Right? It's like, to even question it is kind of silly, because to question it implies it might go wrong. But there's really nothing to question. It's like the comedy of the human being. And we're so sweet in this. It's like if you ask the human being, or if you ask the mind, what do you need in this life? In some way or another, the mind says, I need to not see what I'm afraid of. Do you see how that's fear of fear? Do you see that all of your heart-opening experiences, that which has allowed more love, has been by seeing what you're afraid of? But yet if you ask the mind, it says, what I need tomorrow is not to see what I'm afraid of. Which is the same as saying, what I need is no more love. No love's expansion. That's why I love this space inside that recognizes, I don't know what I need. Life knows. Because looking at my experience, this tiger character has never known. Has never known. I've just tried to avoid. And sooner or later, life did what it needed to do. And it's so great because you see a permission to relax into that. Like, oh, life knows. I don't even need to figure it out. And we spend so much energy trying to figure it out. That's the faith. And I'll tell you, to walk with faith in this world, you'll be seen as crazy.
Hallelujah.
Yeah, hallelujah. It's like, oh, I can relax into my crazy.
Yeah.
Because in the world, people want to have faith in something that they can see. And we've seen that in our own lives. We put our faith in images, in objects, and see how they've failed every time. It's funny how religious it can become.
Or even money
Mm-hmm.
or cars.
Yeah, anything. Anything the mind can imagine, you can try and put your faith in it. Essentially saying, if I trust this, then I might get love. And it's failed.
And that's the fear.
Yeah. Yeah, if you put faith in an image, it's like it automatically comes with fear. Because you're putting faith in something outside of yourself, and now you can lose that something. And if you can lose something, then there's fear.
And if it doesn't give you what you expected it to give you,
Mm-hmm.
then what's wrong?
Exactly. This is, again, to point to a space within yourself that doesn't even want anything. Like, see if you can recognize that subtleness inside of yourself that doesn't want. Almost as if the whole thing is already perfectly set up. Like you're so intimately intertwined with the source of life. Yes, that is the space. And when you see that, nothing is undone.
Mm-hmm.
You even lose all of your needs, which human beings really like their needs.
So relieving
Yeah.
to not need or
Yeah.
want.
It's like if I were to ask, do you need oxygen? And do you notice that you're breathing it right now? So you don't need it. Need implies like future, like just over there. But in this moment right now, it's given to you. So you don't need it. Will you need it tomorrow? Let's find out. Don't even know if I'm going to be alive. If I'm not alive, I don't need it. And so in this moment of what's real, nothing's needed.
And no matter what, you always get what you need.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Not for the character, right? This is what the character's terrified of, is that I won't be able to survive my separate sense of self. And that's the character that dies, playfully speaking, where there's no more faith in that self-image. Because notice, we all have this character, and we put faith in that character that says, okay, Tiger, if you can do this and this and this and this and this, right? If you can get your shit together, then you'll get the love. How many times has that failed? Only every time.
That makes it an infinite journey of
Yeah.
looking for something.
Exactly.
You'll never find.
Exactly. You spend your
It's
whole
always
life.
there.
Yes.
It has been.
Yes. Fish swimming around frantically looking for the water.
Yeah.
And as human beings, it's like we wake up in the morning on some sort of mission to find it. It's like, okay, I'm going to find my legs today, so let's go for a run. And this is the beautiful comedy in being human, because every human being looking for the same thing, and it's already there. I mean, imagine this. Like a friend comes to you looking for love, and you see that they are the love that they're looking for. That's so sweet. And so in their frantic whatever, there's an embrace that totally allows them to be them.
Again, it's the stripping away of all the conditioning and messages,
Yeah,
coming back to the center.
yeah,
And coming back to loving ourselves.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. Which is to see that there's nothing missing. I mean, it's like that's the greatest love when you look at another person, when you see there's nothing missing. It's like you look at another person, and that's why the parent-child relationship is such a great illustration of that. It's like there's nothing you can do to mess up my love for you. It's like, it's irrelevant. It's unconditional. And in that, the child goes, oh, thank God. I can relax then.
But eventually, it's worried again.
It's what?
The child eventually gets worried again.
Yeah, because they can't find it in their parent.
Yeah, I think the parent gets worried
Yeah.
because their love is much more firm than ours.
Yeah. Well, the illustration will never be able to be captured by the reality of the parent-child relationship. But it points to the illustration of God being the father and us as children kind of thing. In many ways, it's the closest the human being can get, relatively speaking, that love for a child, which is a love for a part of yourself that cannot get it wrong. And in this, you recognize that you are the creator, right? The parent's the creator of the child, and the creator loves the creation. And in this, you are the creator of everything. And so every human being becomes your child. Every sound becomes your child.
And you're your creator. You're your creator of your thoughts as well.
Yeah. And in that, one doesn't need to fear their thoughts. It's like, oh, I can just love everything. Shit. And even the reality of forgetting this, that can be loved too. Knowing that I will forget this tomorrow, that can be loved too.
Big part of acceptance for what is.
Yeah. And I see for myself, the only hindrance to that acceptance is the character who I think I am, questioning everything. Right? The character of me questions its acceptance in, is it going to serve me? Right? Is it going to uphold my self-image? Then I'll accept it. Which is like a form of a worship for the separate self, which is so delusionally insane because it separates you from what you want. And that's the illustration of the devil. The devil was once an angel in heaven, and he says that I'm going to go do this on my own. He realized the party wasn't about him, so he's like, I'm going to go have my own party, and separates himself from the divine and tries to be his own God and just makes a mess. And that's essentially an illustration of what we do as human beings. We are life as a whole by ourselves, and then we want to become our own thing.
Inject ourselves
Yeah,
and try to do it with everything else
yeah.
except our human nature. And it's miserable.
It is. It's hell. It's literally hell.
I looked at that picture right there, and it's such a picture of love.
Yeah.
That's what we've been talking about.
Okay.
Yeah. And you see that love in all of like nature. It's everywhere.
So pure.
And this is the thing. It's so beautiful that when you see love, you feel love. You are love. It's like to see love is to recognize you are the love that you're seeing. It's like this is the big dilemma in the play of self-love in the human game. Human beings are trying to love themselves as an idea. They're trying to love the story about themselves, the character. And that's not a real something. And that story is constantly changing. And so it's an impossible task to love yourself as a separate something. But you notice the movement that says, I want to love myself is really saying, I want to feel love. I want to unite with wholeness. And we recognize that to feel love happens when you share love, when you see love. And so if you're out in a garden and you see a beautiful flower and you say, I love you, flower, in that moment, you feel love. And so saying, I love you, flower, in a very real way, is loving what you are. As you extend it, as you see it. And again, that's just an openness to see it, an availability. That is giving love to yourself. And as you love the flower, you're also loving the soil, because without the soil, there'd be no flower. It's actually one thing. And so when you say, I love you, flower, you're saying, I love you, soil, too. Thank you. Which means you're saying, I love you, rain. I love you, trees. I love you, stars, and everything in between, including you. Also, which is why when you say, I hate you, flower, you're the one that feels hate. Do you see this? To say I hate you, flower, says I hate you, universe. The flower isn't separate from the universe. To hate any one thing in life is to hate all of life.
And it's so reflective, just like love.
Yeah.
You express love. Like you've been saying, you feel it.
Yeah.
And just saying hate is like you've
that's amazing that you hate, thinking you're hating something out there, but yet you're the one that feels hate. It's like if somebody says to me, I hate you. Like, how's that feel? How's that working out for you? Oh, I hate you more now. Huh? You see, and that's, I mean, from a relationship standpoint, there's such a wisdom to allow people to hate you. For one, it's very loving in nature to allow them to feel how they're feeling. But it gives them an opportunity to see what's really going on. Because you see, if you engage, you empower the delusion. You make the delusion real. The idea that there's something about what I am that you hate. That's not really what it's about. And again, this is why I swear to God, every human being is playing their perfect function that allows everyone to wake up. Right? The spiritual idea says, when everyone wakes up, then everyone will be how I think they should be. Which, like, the mind's idea of world peace is a complete disaster for everyone else. World peace is when everyone does what I think that they should do, not realizing that the peace is already done. Like looking at the forest, you see that even though it's perceived chaos, it's divine order. So the peace is already done. Nothing in the forest needs to change. I experience the peace when I allow the forest to be the forest. And same with life and other human beings. When I give everyone back to themselves, then I experience it. Which is so funny, because if there's anything inside of me that is withholding freedom from another human being, it hurts. And so we have the real opportunity, which I consider to be the real spiritual work, is to look inside of your being and to see where you are withholding freedom from life and others. It's almost like saying, is there anything inside that's blaming anything? Which is a withholding of love, which again is ultimately to yourself.
The Beatles were right.
All you need is love. Yes, all you need is love. And if we ever think love is not enough, then we misunderstand what love is. Because love is everything. It's like, see this about the nature of love. Love doesn't have an agenda. It's not trying to get something, because it's already done, right? The whole thing's already complete. So there's nothing to get. The human being's difficulty with love is that it loves with an agenda to get something back. And so we think love's not working. It's like, I'm loving this person, but they're not giving me what I want. Well, that's not really love then. It's a good start.
Or even bringing it back to the self, like that, loving this story that we feel like we need to be, and it's not serving us.
Yeah.
And then we hate that, and that's only reflecting on ourselves.
Yeah.
And then it's interesting to play with the idea of giving, if I think that I have to be a certain way to get love from anyone,
Mm-hmm.
how how rude. I would never not love someone
Yeah,
because of some shortcoming or fault that they think they have.
yeah,
So why should I,
Do it to yourself.
Yeah.
take that power away from someone else?
yeah. But then you take it away from yourself. It's funny because it invites you to step out on the ledge and be like, whoa. And this is often where we're afraid to fall into it. It's like, oh, I can't go that far. I can't let go that much.
But you can
Exactly. Yeah. It's like, I can't jump off the cliff because you think there's a bottom. You think you're going to land somewhere. You don't. You just float. And I see that in a very real way. If there's any choice from my being, it's not a worldly choice. Like there's no choices for me to make in this world. The only choice, if anything, is one of allowing love or denying love. It's like that's the only choice life presents to me. And whatever might be arising, whatever I think is happening or not happening, it's like when I look at other people, I don't see them as making choices. I see the divine moving through them. And so in this, there's no blame for them in their choices and what they're appearing to do or not do. It's so funny because traditionally we look at people and we think that they're doing something. No, they're not. And even looking at my own self, it's so awesome to see that I'm not the one doing anything. You see, there's in the world, there's this demand where you take responsibility, which is a subtle form of self-blame. Because the world wants to blame someone, so they ask you to blame yourself. There's a profound difference between what you might call worldly responsibility and accountability. Accountability says, I can acknowledge that this moved through, but did I do that or not? I can't really say that. It's like, can you really say that the apple tree made the apple? Or was that all of life? The tree just stood there. Right? The ripe fruit or the rotten fruit, did the tree do that? Or was life asking for that? Does rotten fruit not serve? Who am I to say that one is better than the other? So in that, I don't have to question, is the tree lovable? I say, thank you, tree, for being what you are. Life has asked you to be this way.
This is why I have this feeling that everyone is awake and they're
Yes.
just playing
Yes.
cards So when you don't acknowledge that, you're just saying that the soil is more important than the
Yep.
flower or the rain or whatever. So
Yep. And here's a secret for you. The ego won't like this, but it's true. In all of creation, you're the only one that's not awake. When you wake up, you will see that everything is already awake.
Everything is already there.
It's already there. It's almost like, and we play this game as, human beings, and we want to wake up the world and all of these things. But we're really just talking to ourselves. It's like my roommate just bought a new car, a Toyota Prius. And now when we drive around, we see Priuses everywhere. Right? When something becomes your experience, you start to see it in the world. Now, when she bought the car, everyone else didn't go out and buy the car. They were already there and just not seen. And so the one looking starts to wake up. And they say, oh, people are starting to wake up. You see how you're just seeing your own experience. Is it true that the world is waking up? You are waking up. And you are the world. And so when you say the world is almost awake, who are you talking to? Yourself. Because there's a neighbor that thinks the world's going to shit. They bought a different car. See, the world that you experience, no other being for all of time, past and future, will ever experience that world. The world you experience, you are the creator of. And even if somebody tells you about their world, that's happening in your world. You cannot experience anything outside of your world.
It's so massive.
It's so massive.
Because we think our world is so big. And if you look at everybody else, like, holy,
Yeah,
it's a lot of worlds.
yeah,
Walking around, that's a lot.
yeah. It's in the same way, it's like we point telescopes out into the sky and we see that there's billions of galaxies.
Exactly.
And inside of those galaxies, there's billions of stars. And you see it's just like on top of it, on top of it, on top of it. It's unending. And so supposedly there's 7.5 billion people all having their own galaxy within galaxies and galaxies. And no matter how far out you look, you keep going. Same with when you look in. It keeps getting smaller and smaller. We can't even find the end of it.
Mm-hmm.
And we keep thinking we almost found it. We're almost there, so we got to build bigger telescopes.
We are.
Exactly. That's what you look and you look and look all around and you find, oh, it's me. I've been looking for what I am.
just keep you posted.
Yes. What a great play. And then when you see that it's you, when you see that it's the one that is looking out from behind your eyes, you see that everything you see is you, which means there's now no more separation. There's literally nothing to fear. Notice this, when you get afraid, you're believing that what you're seeing is not your creation. See that? If ever you're with fear, there's a belief that there's something out there. But when you see that it's your creation, then you welcome it home.
It's like being on the wrong side.
Yeah.
Like seeing from the outside first instead of being from the inside.
Yeah.
And then what you are sees.
Yes.
It's a hard thing to do and
Yeah.
a place to be all the time.
Yeah. Good luck with that.
Because when you're on the inside and seeing, it's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden you're, oh, but I have to be this and I have to be that, and I was doing so good back then.
Yes.
Like,
Which is you weren't even doing anything.
exactly.
Exactly. I like playing this game with myself where I see that people's actions are not their actions. It's like when I say this, it's like when somebody does something, do you see how you immediately give it an interpretation? Right? You create a meaning. Do you see how what they did is not that meaning? Right? So the mind says you did such and such. But do you see how the such and such didn't even happen? You just created that. You put it on top.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we look at the world and other people,
It happened for you.
yeah, exactly. I did that. So look at this. When you think other people are doing things, you're actually doing it.
How weird.
Yes. It's like what's really happening beyond your own projection. What's really there? And you will only find the divine. You will only find the divine. And same with your own actions, right? You tell stories about them. And those stories never even actually happen.
It's all about the perception of
Yes. You see how you're forgiven before anything even happens. Because what you think can happen, what you think you can do or can't do, isn't even a real thing. You're already forgiven. It's like the human being in the mind thinks that it can interrupt the miracle. It cannot. It's like God has no concern for the activities of the devil. God's just like, you're so cute, man. You keep trying, let me know when you're ready to come home.
The devil is the prodigy son.
Yeah, yes. Absolutely.
Yeah.
We are so blessed, so blessed. Nothing happens. Nothing happens. And to see that nothing happens, then there's no defense.
There's nothing to be scared of.
Yeah, nothing needs to be protected. It's like God doesn't need to be defended. You see, that's why, like, in a way, the play of God allows for freedom. Because God knows the only thing you're going to run into is God. It's like, you can't escape. So go play. And see, and from a divine point of view, that's a massive safety net for your humanness that says, go play, right? I've created this for you to play. Not for you to maintain a Zen state, but for you to play. To get lost.
Because that is the Zen state.
That's the what?
That ends up being the Zen state.
Exactly, yeah. When you can play.
Yeah, forget.
Like the one who's meditating for 12 hours a day for 5 years. They're not playing. They're trying to be with God
Right.
rather than realizing they are that. Do you realize that when you know that you are that, you're not really doing many spiritual things?
Because it's all.
Exactly. It's all spirit. And so in that, the spiritual things become play. There's no seriousness to them.
And we're being exactly what we were supposed to be.
Exactly. And which is what I love so much about the opportunity of coming together like once a week, just checking in real quick, right?
Mhm.
Like, oh yeah. I'm like, okay, go play.
Yeah.
And come back next week. Just check in.
Great.
Yeah. And it really does,
Confirmation.
Yeah.
yeah, it really does give you a strength, like, oh, it's allowed,
Yeah.
play time, like, it doesn't have to be, life doesn't have to be so serious.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It can be play, and don't listen to the person that says it can't be.
Yeah. Don't take serious other people serious.
Do your own shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like when I see myself getting serious about somebody else's seriousness, I'm taking myself seriously. It's not even really about their serious. It's like, so I'm thanking them for their serious. It's like if anybody can disturb me, thank you. Thank you. Because I can see where I take myself seriously so that I don't have to. You can see other people's seriousness as play, which in a very real possible way, it pisses them off even more. But that's divinely perfect. It's like that's part of the play. See there, man, there's this freedom to be.
I think of it as, we can't screw up, because we'll always still be alive,
Yeah,
and if we're not, then that's that.
yeah.
Like,
Good.
Well, it doesn't end.
yeah, it's like, we won't die from not taking ourselves seriously, or
Right.
not fitting the bill, or not, or facing our fear. We won't die.
Yeah,
No, it's gonna take my breath away. I might, okay, I'm homeless, okay, maybe this happens and that happens, but
yeah,
I'm still alive,
yeah,
and that's a gift, and that's God, and I made it, again, like, I'm a little seed that made it, and I thrive, and there's no way that life is going to be taken from me by living freely,
right. You can't, there's literally nothing to lose.
right?
The only thing you will lose in this life is what you are not. And the only thing you will gain is a deeper clarity of what you already are.
Mm-hmm. And sometimes,
And nothing to feel guilty about when
Nope.
you see the mirror.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah, because guilt would again imply some form of separation.
Mhm.
Yeah, there's none of these things.
yeah.
Yeah.
What about the co-responsibility?
The what?
Co-responsibility, that we are co-responsible for this manifestation.
That can be play.
That can be played or played.
Play. Like for example, I'm engaged in a project right now with some people developing something. And there's a play of responsibility. It's like, okay, I have this part, I'm going to do this. I don't know if it's going to work out. But what I do know is that in this moment, there's a genuine interest, right? There's something in me that says yes. And so that's playful. So I can follow that. Will it change? I don't know. Let's find out. And the beautiful thing about that is the people that I work with in this way, they're kind of coming from the same point of view. They understand me in that way.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, it wouldn't be too big of a disappointment if I changed my mind. But see, naturally, as you see these things, you open yourself up to connect with others who see these things. And then there's natural, blooming.
Mhm.
It's like, that's why I would make a terrible employee in the world today, right? It's just, it wouldn't fit well. And so there's no pull, right? Notice this. There's no sincerity of pull to do that, right? So it's almost like life says, you're not needed over here. Follow your inspiration. The only thing that would pull me in a direction that doesn't resonate for me is fear. Right? Notice this. We deny our sincerity because we're afraid. And in our denial, we move in ways that aren't sincere. And we get ourselves in all sorts of trouble. Thinking that we're holding on to something. It's like the person that stays in a job that doesn't resonate because they fear not having something. And so they kind of suffer through to get to an end point. And then even if they get there, they say, it's not even what I thought it was going to be. What the fuck?
Yeah.
I should have just enjoyed myself. See, that's the classic story of the deathbed, where you look back and you say, what the fuck, man? I took this so seriously. Everything I tried to hold on to is now gone. Why didn't I just enjoy myself? And that's a great invitation to just be still and get real honest with your being. It's like, what am I denying in myself because I'm afraid of losing something tomorrow? And this is such a great teacher to pay attention to this sense inside of yourself, because if you're ever denying your own sincerity, you'll feel twisted. It's the same as not letting yourself breathe. If you don't let yourself breathe, you start to feel like you're going to die. If you don't let yourself be sincere to be you, you start to feel like you're going to die. Same thing. And so that pain is a beautiful invitation that says, breathe. Breathe. Thank you.